All right, hello everyone. So great to see so many of you here. I'm sure we still have people filtering in, so I'll just talk for a minute while we wait for other folks. But I'm Rebecca Murphy, and it is really great to see so many people here. I think this is a really quite the popular topic right now, so not surprised by the number of signups that we got. We'll get started in a few minutes, but just for those of you who maybe haven't heard of Swarmia, well, first, I'm Rebecca Murphy. I'm the field CTO here. And prior to Swarmia, I was doing developer productivity work at Stripe, and prior to that at Indeed. So I've been in this developer productivity space for more than 10 years now at this point. So so for those of you who don't know Swarmia, we are a software engineering intelligence platform. That is the term of art. We give you visibility into what we call the three pillars of engineering effectiveness. So number one, business outcomes. We really believe at Swarmia that if you aren't delivering value to the business, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. And so helping businesses understand whether they are focused on the right things and spending time on the things they think they want to be spending time on. Of course, we also work with developer productivity and helping teams become more productive, more predictable, and have more consistent and high quality delivery. And then finally, developer experience. So what can we do to make an engineer's task no harder than the task itself? What roadblocks can we remove? What bottlenecks can we remove? What tools can we introduce to improve things for the developers doing the work? As you can imagine, we've recently spent a ton of time thinking about and writing about AI and its impact on engineering organizations. If you're interested in how Swarmia can help here, Pino will drop a link in the chat momentarily to help you learn more. And if you want to request a demo or see our AI measurement capabilities in action, we can get set up for that. And because AI is such a big theme for us this year, we're also proud platinum sponsors of the DORA report, the brand new DORA 2025 State of AI Assisted Software Development. And we're really excited to have Nathen here from the DORA team at Google Cloud and Emily Nakashima, the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Honeycomb, both joining us today. So first, we're going to let Nathen talk for about 20 minutes through some highlights of the DORA research findings this year, especially around AI. And then Emily will join us so that the three of us can chat. And then toward the end, you'll have a chance to ask us questions. So Nathen, welcome to the stage. And you can introduce yourself a little bit more than I did if you'd like. And I'll let you take over.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me today. And it's really good to see you, Rebecca. I'm excited to do another event with
Another,
Swarmia here.
yes,
Yeah.
I am pulling up your slides presently. There you are. And I will drop off.
I,
So look forward to hearing what you have to say, Nathen, and I'll see you again in a few minutes.
all right. See you in a minute. And hello, everyone. As Rebecca mentioned, my name is Nathen Harvey. I lead the DORA program here with Google Cloud. And I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk a little bit about our latest report. And let's just dive right in. So if you've not heard of DORA, or even if you have, maybe it's a good idea to just recap exactly what DORA is. DORA is a research program that has been running for over a decade now. Our research looks into the capabilities that enable technology-driven teams and organizations to thrive. If you have been following DORA for a while, you might think or recognize DORA as an acronym. However, over the last year and a half or so, we have de-acronymed DORA. So DORA just means DORA, but our tagline is get better at getting better. Because this is really what we want to help you and your team do. Adopt a mindset and a practice of continuous learning and continuous improvement. DORA's research every year goes out and runs a global survey. And this year we were very fortunate to have responses in our survey from nearly 5,000 different people. These individuals are working around the world in organizations of every shape and size and in every industry vertical. We complement this survey data with nearly or more than 100 hours of qualitative data. We have qualitative researchers on the team who sit down and do one-on-one interviews with practitioners and with leaders to really understand how are they doing. This really gives us a lot more color and context around some of the survey data that we collect. I should also state that DORA's research is completely program and platform agnostic. We do not ask about specific tools or specific technologies, but we do look into those capabilities and conditions, the ways of working that teams and organizations have. Now, if you've not already done so, I highly recommend that you go and download this year's report. The 2025 report is called The State of AI Assisted Software Development. And again, this is a name change for our report, and it really does reflect what we're all seeing and feeling and trying to understand what's happening within the industry. AI has definitely entered the scene, if you will, and it is, I think, here to stay for a good long while. And it's really important that we take this time to really understand how do teams and organizations today get the most out of AI. And I'm really excited that DORA has been here since the beginning of this AI evolution so that we can watch as things change over time. I'm also really happy that Swarmia agreed to be a platinum sponsor of this year's research, and I hope that you'll download the report from them. I should also mention that Honeycomb, where Emily is from, is a silver sponsor. So we've got all kinds of DORA love happening on today's webinar, and I'm really, really excited about that. So if you've not yet had a chance to do so, there's the QR code and a link. You can go ahead and download and read the report, and we'll just wait here for you while you do that. Of course, we're not actually going to wait here for you while you do that. The report is quite a long report. It's actually 142 pages or so. So maybe this is a good use of AI. Summarize that DORA report for me. Well, don't do that yet either. I'm here to give you a little bit of a summary and touch on some of the highlights. Now, one of the biggest messages, the biggest TLDR, if you will, from this year's report, AI's primary role in software development is that of an amplifier. We really see that the greatest returns on AI investment come from a strategic focus in the underlying organizational systems. You see, it's not just about use more AI, but really thinking critically about how your systems are working, how your organization works, and where can you best apply AI. And we know that without, or we see that without this foundation, AI has a tendency to create local pockets of productivity. And you know what? If you're sitting in one of those local pockets, that can feel really good. But organizationally, or when we look at the system, those local pockets of productivity sometimes get lost, or oftentimes get lost to downstream chaos. So again, that can be a real challenge for us. We want to prevent that, and that's really what we investigated this year. So let's look at some of the results that we found. And we're going to start with just a glimpse into AI adoption and use. Now, just as a reminder, we run this survey, we collect this data throughout the year. The survey itself ran in June and July of 2025. Now, you and I both know that this AI space is changing very rapidly. So think of this data as a snapshot of the industry at that time, June and July 2025. And again, we're hearing from organizations of every shape and size right around the world. One of the things that we wanted to understand was how much are you relying on AI at work? And what we found was that within our sample set, 95% of the people that are using AI rely on AI at work at least a little bit. Relying on it is a little bit different than just using it, right? You might use something, but not really rely on it. So we're very careful about how we ask these questions because we really want to understand, are you relying on AI at work? I should also note that these AI questions are really targeted towards the individual that is doing the work. And in our survey responses, we hear from software engineers. We also hear from product managers, from technical writers, from software developers in test. We hear from leaders and all kinds of different people in and around technology-driven teams and organizations. So this isn't necessarily asking, do you rely on AI to write code? Although if you're a software engineer, that is what we're asking you. But we are asking about your general reliance on AI for tasks that you typically do in your role at work. And as I said, 95% of the people that are using AI rely on it at least a little bit. Well, we also want to understand, how does this make you feel? Do you feel more productive as you're working with AI? How is AI affecting your own sense of productivity? And you can see here that a large majority of our respondents say that AI is slightly or moderately or even extremely increasing their productivity. So I'm relying on it and I feel more productive. Let's take a look at something that is near and dear to every software engineer's heart, the quality of the underlying code bases that you're working with. Now, as you're using more AI, how is that impacting the overall code quality of the code bases that you are working with? And again, we see that a large majority of our respondents are saying that it is improving their underlying code, with about 10% saying it's actually making it slightly worse. So there are definitely some mixed results, but on the whole, we're seeing an improvement in code quality. Now, you may ask, what do we mean by code quality? And you would be right to do so. And we did not specify in our survey, what does it mean to have good code quality? There are certainly aspects that I think about when I think about code quality: the maintainability of that code, the understandability, the readability, the changeability of that code. But our survey question just asks the question generally: what is your perceived impact, or what is the perceived impact that you're seeing AI having on the underlying code base? And again, most people are seeing that improve. Now, this is really interesting. We're relying on it. It helps me feel more productive. On the whole, it's probably improving my underlying code quality, but we run into our first paradox here, and that is in the trust of the quality of AI generated output. And again, we go back to sort of a generic AI generated output, not specifically code quality, but any output that you get from AI, whether that's code that you've generated or an email you're about to send off to your manager or to a prospect or a customer, what have you. And it's really interesting here. We see that a good majority of our respondents trust the quality of AI generated output, at least somewhat, or even a lot, or even a great deal. But about 30% have little or no trust in the quality of the AI generated output. Now, frankly, I think that's about right. I think that's a pretty healthy level of skepticism. In fact, I do want to sit down and have coffee with 11% of our survey respondents, specifically that 4% who trust the output of AI a great deal, and the 7% who trust it not at all. I think that there's probably somewhere in the middle that is a little bit healthier. And this healthy skepticism, I think, is a reminder that, when we use a new tool, we have to make sure that we're validating the results that that tool is giving us. When I think about software development and I think about trusting the quality of the code that's generated by AI, I will only trust it if it's passing the tests that I have set up. And I like leaning on those feedback mechanisms that I have built around those systems. I think they're super, super important. So it is a really interesting thing, though. We see good value that we're getting out of this, and yet trust can be a little bit low in some places. There's another really interesting thing about trust, though, I think, and that is that trust and adoption tend to feed one another. In other words, the more you trust something, the more likely you are to use it. And the more you use something, the better you understand what you should expect from it. And having a tool meet your expectations is one way of thinking about trust. So as I use it more, I trust it more. And because I trust it more, I'm likely to use it more and trust it more and use it more and trust it more. So it's this nice virtuous cycle that we see building up here over time. Now, I do want to explore a little bit deeper, though. And DORA does this. We look deeper into AI's relationship across some key outcomes. And in particular, we want to understand, how does AI drive the key outcomes that we actually care about? And in order to do that, I want to tell you a little bit about our methodology. The first thing we do is we create an AI adoption score for everyone in our population, all of our survey respondents. That score is made up of 3 different items: your reliance on AI, your trust of AI, and your reflexive use of AI. So we give you a score, and then we've collected a lot of data about outcomes and capabilities and so forth. That we create a model with that. And so we have the pleasure of being able to do some really fun experiments with our data model. In particular, we can take the AI adoption score and turn it up and then run simulations across the data and see what happens. Now, you can't really do this in the real world. You work in a complex organization. You can't change just one variable and see what happens, but we can do that with our data. And that allows us to make some predictions about what teams are actually seeing. So without further ado, I want to show you what those predictions bear out. And so the way that you can read this chart, on the left-hand side, we have those outcomes that we care about. And across the y-axis, we have how much they're changing. That dashed line at 0 would be that as you increase AI adoption, this thing doesn't change. To the right side of it, the thing increases, and to the left side, it decreases. So here's what we see. First up, individual effectiveness is improving. Software delivery instability is also increasing. Ooh, but that's not a good thing. We don't want that to improve or increase. We'd rather that go down. Organizational performance, time doing valuable work, code quality, product performance, software delivery throughput, and team performance are all improving as well. And that leaves us burnout and friction, which essentially are at 0. They're just on either side of 0, but there's enough uncertainty in our prediction here that you may as well think of them as not changing at all. So there's some pretty good outcomes here, but software delivery instability, we'd rather see that on the left-hand side of the dashed line. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more in our conversation later. But speaking of software delivery instability, this is one of our factors that we think about when we talk about software delivery performance. You may know DORA's software delivery performance metrics well. There used to be 4 of them. For the past 5 years, for the past 2 years, we've looked at 5 metrics. And these are those 5 metrics. We have 3 for throughput and 2 for stability. So we kind of think about these things as different ways of thinking about software delivery. How much can you get through the system? And when you ship something to production, how stable is that change? DORA has used these software delivery performance metrics for a long time. But the reality is, simply looking at software delivery performance does not give you a full picture of how a team is doing. So this year, we looked beyond just software delivery performance to look into things like team performance and product performance and individual effectiveness, friction, burnout, time doing valuable work, and so forth. When we do an analysis across our data set to see how do all of these things interact with one another, how do they play out, we actually found 7 different archetypes or team profiles in our data set. Archetypes that we called everything from foundational challenges or legacy bottleneck all the way through to the pragmatic performers and the harmonious high achievers. Now, when we look at all of these together, it looks like this. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Look, I know you can't read that either. There's too much information here on this slide. Again, a good reason to go and download the report so that you can get all of the details. But let's take a look maybe, actually, we won't take a look just yet at a little bit more detail, but I have that coming up for you. But here's the thing. We see 95% of folks that are using AI or relying on AI, and we see widespread adoption. But we see 7 different outcomes in terms of how teams are doing. What's up with that? AI is kind of a constant, it's everywhere, but we see these different outcomes for these different teams. So that led us to this question of maybe it's not that you're adopting AI, but rather how you're adopting AI. What are the capabilities and conditions that go along to amplify that AI adoption across those outcomes? And so I'm happy to introduce our first ever DORA AI capabilities model. These are the capabilities and conditions that we see in our data set truly amplify the impact of adopting AI on those outcomes that you care about. Very quickly, they are a clear and communicated AI stance, healthy data ecosystems, making sure that AI has access to your internal data, strong version control practices, working in small batches, a user-centric focus, and quality internal platforms. And when we look at this in a model or this graph, what we see on the left-hand side is AI adoption. Everyone's adopting AI, and lots of teams are feeling pressure to adopt more and more and more AI. On the right-hand side, we see those outcomes. We know that AI and AI adoption in and of itself can impact those outcomes. But when you put these capabilities in the middle, they kind of act as an amplifier. As you increase AI, with these capabilities, it amplifies the impact that AI adoption has on these outcomes. So let's take a very specific look at what that might look like. One of those teams that we talked about earlier was the legacy bottleneck team. Now you can see here as you look at that radar chart that their product performance is pretty low. So maybe you're on this team and you've made a commitment to improve product performance, but you're also under a mandate to use more AI. So how can we improve product performance while also increasing our AI adoption? Well, we can use the DORA AI capabilities model to help figure this out because we know that with AI adoption, together with some capabilities, it's having an amplifying effect on product performance. Let's follow the arrows backwards. And what we see is that these three capabilities, AI accessible internal data, working in small batches, and having a clear and communicated stance, these amplify the effect of AI adoption specifically on product performance. So as a team, we might want to make sure that we're doing pretty well across all three of these areas, or maybe there's one or two of these areas that have an opportunity for improvement. That's a good place for you to invest. So AI really is a mirror, reflecting and amplifying organizational capabilities. That's a quick run through and a summary of just some of the very most prescient highlights of this year's state of AI assisted software development. I hope it's given you enough of a motivation to go and download the report and read it for yourself. And with that, I'm going to invite Rebecca back up onto the stage to hand things back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Nathan. I'm going to, one of us can stop sharing. Here we go. Thanks so much. And just a reminder to everybody, if you have questions as we're talking, you can add them to the questions tab down the bottom right of well, I'm on a browser on my desktop, so that's where I see it. It's bottom right down there. Um, really loved one of my favorite parts of the report this year was the cohorts and kind of laying out the different deficiencies and then mapping those to the capabilities. I think that was it's really powerful stuff. So thanks for that. And Emily, you can join us now as well, and the three of us are going to chat for a little bit. So, hello.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being here, and thanks to Honeycomb too for sponsoring this. This was just sort of serendipitous that I didn't even don't know. I knew that you were sponsoring it when I asked you. So thanks so much. So Emily, you are the SVP of Engineering at Honeycomb, and I hear that there was, well, you told me that Honeycomb recently joined the AI Mandate Club. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what led you there and how that has been playing out.
Yeah. So I'll just say up front, we didn't call it an AI mandate. It was a letter from our founders to the company, and our employees immediately shorthanded it as the AI mandate.
Yeah,
So of course,
well,
um,
well played, even if it didn't work out.
yeah. I think that we just sort of we came to a lot of conviction within our executive team that this is real. This is the next wave of software. All of our customers are software companies, and we said we have to be going through whatever they're going through, and in particular we have to make sure that we are out a little bit ahead. Like as customers are building with AI, we have to know what they need and how to respond to that. And so I think it was totally the right move. We are a company that has a lot of ops DNA. I think a lot of that comes from Charity Majors, one of our co-founders. But we just sort of attract people who have a little bit of skepticism. And so I think that first internal stance was like a little skepticism of this new thing. But we just sort of saw that adoption sort of wasn't going fast enough with just sort of letting people experiment. And so the founders drafted a letter together that sort of said, we think this is the real next wave. We have to make sure we're on the top of it. And in particular, they set out this target of 2x. Try to achieve 2x the impact by a year from now. And of course, the immediate concerns you get are, how will this be judged? But the idea was just sort of like, this is a directional target to help us kind of get calibrated together.
Got it. Got it. So what does AI usage look like at Honeycomb? Like, is it something that everybody's using every day? Do you have a million agents flying around in the cloud, doing agentic things? Or yeah, what does it look like at Honeycomb?
Yeah, a couple things that are really important to us are number one, it's not just for developers. So I was glad to see this called out in the Swarmia blog post, and I think it's mentioned in the report as well. Just that a lot of times the productivity gains are not just from having tools output more code, right? So we want to make sure that we do this across all departments, and then within engineering, I would say it's a mix of sometimes folks going back and forth in kind of a chat-based interface, working on different technical things, and then a lot of sort of agent-based code generation and varying degrees of automation. I think we are very much one of those we're kind of a mid-sized startup engineering team of about 100 people, and so we want to support people in kind of trying out a range of tools, and so we have done that choose your own adventure thing where there's probably 6 to 10 fairly well-known tools that you could choose to adopt.
Right. Do you think that's a really interesting point as 2026 looms ever closer? It's the end of October. I don't know when that happened, but as 2026 planning is going on, how are you thinking about the range of tools that you offer? Because we've made the same choice. It's kind of like choose your own adventure. We want to learn, and the learning and experimentation is more important than the fairly nominal dollar cost of these different tools. So, at least for now. So yeah, how are you thinking about is there a universe where you want to be transitioning to just a handful, and how are you approaching that?
Yeah, I think that we have come to the conclusion that both extremes here are bad. Having 200 different AI tools that we make available to people that we pay $20 a month for, it just has become overwhelming. And we find that there may be a few people who are just sort of at the far end of the curve who really want to try all that stuff and experiment. But most of our team really wants to know what are the kind of like 4 to 6 tools that are blessed internally. Some people I think would even prefer a smaller number, and also, to the point that was covered in the blog post, we don't want to lock people into a set of tools for a long time, knowing that, improvements will be coming. We probably will want to assess if we still sort of have the best in class tools in front of us. So we're, thinking about buying things on a maximum 1 year time horizon and sort of trying to give people this is the blessed set that we think are good, but also leave space around the edges to experiment.
Yeah, even a yearly commitment seems
It's a
like
lot. Yeah, no,
a
definitely. It feels like
wild choice to make right
if
now.
you get 6 to 9 months, you're doing great.
Right, right. Um, So I mentioned agents flying around in the cloud. I know lots of people are doing the agentic coding with Claude Code kind of thing on their own laptop. But are you seeing any of the are you seeing any of the more like cut it what you read about on LinkedIn all the time? I've got 1,000 agents running in the cloud, and I fired all my software engineers, or I didn't hire them in the first place. I know you still have software engineers, so clearly that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I would say we certainly we haven't reduced staffing at all. We don't really plan to. I think that like there's an incredible opportunity here to have higher impact teams, and if you feel like you can go hire developers and get more impact out of them, I think for a lot of startups that's actually a really exciting proposition, right? You want to hire more in that world. Um, so for us, we're looking for kind of productivity and impact gains, but it is pretty orthogonal to thinking about hiring, and then hopefully it just lets us scale more sensibly.
Mhm.
The pains of onboarding new engineers at a startup, right? Like, the more you can smooth that curve, the better.
Right.
But we do, I think that our engineers who are sort of the most advanced with these tools are running, multiple agents, sort of, doing that kind of multitasking where they're sort of jumping between a bunch of different prompts, like, sort of letting different things run in an automated way in the background and then kind of checking in on the output. And yeah, I've heard people liken this to being a manager of agents. And I do I do see that model kind of taking hold a bit more.
Yeah. How's AI playing out in your world as a leader? I'm guessing that you aren't, well, maybe you are working tickets, but maybe not. But yeah, how is it kind of changing your job and your approach to your job?
Yeah, I think it's like I think for companies to really succeed at this is so important that it starts at the very top. And so I have really taken seriously the fact that like I need to live through all the pains along with everyone else. And so it's a little bit of vibe coding, but mostly it's trying to bring these tools into other areas of my workflow, like meetings, one-on-one notes, presentations. In particular, I think I'm most excited about the sort of AI as a thought partner use case. refining messages to the rest of the exec team, workshopping slides for big presentations. That really has been a huge force multiplier for me. And I see that for all of our management team as well. So not just at the kind of exec level, but our engineering managers have been getting some really cool gains out of AI tools as well.
Yeah, you told me how it has affected QBR's quarterly business reviews. So
Yeah,
maybe you can share a little bit about that.
this is, I think, one of those company rituals that everyone love hates. Everyone sees the value of doing the quarterly business review, but no one actually is really excited to do them. So for ours, we typically don't do a big slide deck. We have people put together a written document, and then it's our product and engineering execs, it's all of the directors, and then it's the sort of management and senior ICs from those teams. And the first time that we encouraged people to use AI in those, which was about a quarter ago now, we got a bunch of AI written first drafts of these QBR documents that were not very good. And in particular, the thing that really bothered me about them is that AI tends to sort of like mute out the highs and lows. So it was like every team had a slightly above average quarter. So it's like this is not the conversation we're trying to have in QBRs. But this time we encouraged folks to use AI a little more as a thought partner, but make sure that they were writing a good sort of at least first draft or bullets that they input. And we saw that the conversation was actually so much better. The quality of the documents was better. People were driving more engaging conversations. And we sort of asked the teams, hey, how did you do this? And the most successful teams said, we put together a custom GPT that was trained on, my perspective and my product peer, Graham Senior, who is our VP of product. They had trained it on materials from us and been like, respond to this QBR as though you're our VPs of product and engineering, give us feedback. And then they had already incorporated that in so that we could get past the obvious stuff and have a better discussion. It was fantastic. It worked really well.
Yeah, I love the use case of like feeding AI output to a different to a different tool and saying, what did I do wrong? What have I missed here? Nathan, I wanted to pull you into the conversation here too. What are you seeing as far as measuring my favorite topic, our favorite topic at Swarmia, measuring the impact of AI on software development? So I'd love to hear from both of you, but Nathan, maybe you can start. Obviously you showed us graphs with numbers and error bars.
Yes.
So like you have managed to put some numbers around this by talking to
We
5,000 people, but
That's right. We have
any other
definitely
ideas?
done some measurement. And what I would say is that what I see a lot of is that teams are still today measuring AI adoption, which is very different than measuring the impact of AI. What are the differences between those, right? Like when I think about coding tools, like using AI to generate code, you might be measuring how many lines of code did the AI generate in this pull request, or how many pull requests did AI contribute to, or what was your acceptance rate for code that was suggested by AI. All of these things are measures of your adoption of the tool. And it is absolutely true that the AI cannot have any impact if you don't adopt it, right? So you have to use it. It's fine to measure those things. But it's also true that AI adoption in and of itself doesn't guarantee impact, right? So there's something in the middle there. And I think it's really important that we start measuring beyond just the adoption. I talked in my presentation and what we saw in the report, we talked about trust. So starting to get measures of trust, I think, is really important. And frankly, to measure trust, I have some disappointing news. You probably can't pull logs out of any of your systems to understand, do our people trust this, right? This is why I think it's so important that we have a mix of both telemetry from systems, whether that's log data or what have you, and survey data that you can't figure out developer experience without talking to a developer. So we have to have that survey data and mix it together with that log data or telemetry data. So I think that's really, really important. And then I also think that those software delivery performance metrics that DORA has always had, the nice thing about them is that they're kind of trailing metrics for how your engineering efficiency is or how your engineering teams are working. And so it doesn't matter necessarily who's on the team. It could be AI, it could be agents, it could be AI augmented humans. We want to understand, are we able to ship software? But then The downside to just looking at that is that it's not really connected to business metrics, right? And it is, and you mentioned this at the beginning when you were talking about Swarmio, Rebecca, like we have to understand the business impact. DORA's research has shown us over the years that as you improve software delivery performance, your business outcomes like organizational performance, things like profit and customer satisfaction, like those improve also. But I always remind folks, like, don't trust our data. You have to contextualize our findings for your team. And so I want you to look at those software delivery performance numbers together with the business metrics that matter to you and with the developer experience metrics that matter to you and your team, and see that they're moving together, hopefully.
Yeah, I think this has forever been a challenge of software engineering. Is like I said at the top, you can code really fast the wrong thing, and it's metrics like PRs per dev are nominally useful to look at trends over time, but they really don't tell you like were we doing the right thing. Your business outcomes tell you that, but you don't get those business outcomes perhaps right away, and so it's very hard to predict. And I do think, like, I think that the measuring adoption, there was a time when that was, and I think we're still in that time where that is still a valuable pursuit to measure it and like recognize where you have maybe hot spots or cold spots of adoption. But I agree with you that I don't think that is the I don't think that is the be all and end all to are these tools giving us value. Emily, you told a story when we were prepping for this about like my dream, where you actually had a team that stopped using AI for a sprint. And I'm like I'm kind of like out of my cold dead hands. Do you take AI? But what was that like?
Yeah, so this actually came from an observation from one of our most junior engineers at Honeycomb. This is a developer named Ruthie Irvin who joined the company maybe I guess a year and a half ago at this point. But they're super early career software engineer, did a boot camp, and they sort of realized that as they were experimenting with these tools, like obviously like they brought AI tools into their career relatively early on, just in the span of how long they've been doing engineering, they sort of started to feel like it was holding them back from progressing because there were things that they just sort of needed to work through and figure out themselves to make sure that they were really internalizing the concepts and growing as a software engineer. And of course, like when you think about, your own path, it makes complete sense, right? You learn these things through struggling with them and actually fitting the pieces together yourself. And so they sort of asked for permission and got the ability to do some sprints without AI so that they could make sure that they were kind of going back and forth between both like trying to get better with the AI tools, but also picking up those core concepts. And I think it was such a good and brave observation. I think it felt really scary in the face of this letter from the founders to say, I'm going to not do this for a little bit. But I think it was a completely spot on observation.
Yeah, that's awesome. What were there a takeaway? Is this something the whole team did, or was it something that just Ruthie did, or how did it go?
I think it was Ruthie chose to do it, and I think possibly a couple other people on the team opted in as well.
Yeah,
But I think they sort of set the precedent that that's an okay thing to do, and
it's an
so
okay. Yeah.
we have other folks who I think are sort of deciding when it makes sense to kind of flip that switch on different teams.
Yeah, I think that's like those are the sorts of experiments that I want to be able to run to start to answer some of these questions. Um, so you also, Emily. Well, actually, we have a question. I have a question from Tobias. So let's answer that. And Nathan, I see you're replying to Adam as well. But Tobias asked, are we at a point where we should restructure our dev departments to become more like auditors and reviewers? Um, and I maybe there's just a larger question of what does software engineering look like in 2 years? Am I a product manager? Actually, turns out, am I a manager? And I thought I was an IC, but I'm actually managing the robots. Um, so maybe Nathan, you can start. Like, what do you see evolving about software engineering organizations and responsibilities?
Yeah, I would say that we're definitely not yet at a place where the software engineer's job is just to go and read code, but I do think we're seeing a lot more emphasis on the idea that you do have to go and read the code because, as you mentioned, AI is helping us generate a lot more code and a lot faster. Frankly, code generation, the speed with which we type, the speed with which we generate code, or even the quantity of code that we generate has rarely, if ever, been the constraining piece of delivering software. It's not our bottleneck, but we're doing that faster and we're creating more code. So now our bottleneck, and this is kind of that mirroring effect that AI gives us. Like in a smooth flowing organization, AI will increase that flow. In a place where you have constraints, AI will help you feel those constraints or the pain of those constraints more acutely. So as an example, if code review is a real challenge for your organization before you had AI, it's not going to get better as you generate more and more code with AI. In fact, it's going to get worse. So I think on the one hand, a lot of engineers are going to be spending more time reviewing and editing and correcting code that's generated by AI. You also see, I think, a lot of changes happening at the other end of writing software. Emily already talked about, even in the QBR, building up and giving the bots access to internal data and really getting smarter and spending more time on specification. So I think engineers are going to be spending more time on specification, more time on review, maybe relatively the amount of time that they spend actually typing out code will decrease, but I don't think we're ready to change how teams work
Yeah.
completely
Al-
yet.
Although I do think, like you alluded to, code review might become, it already was your bottleneck and now it is more. And we definitely are talking to customers who are realizing that maybe the way they had their team set up for the mix of juniors and seniors, it wasn't correct now because there was so much more burden falling on those senior folks to be doing more code review.
Yeah, I also think that code review is a really interesting place to use AI, especially if you don't trust AI to generate good things for you. Maybe build some of that trust by having it review code that was written. Whether that was written by AI or by human doesn't really matter, but introduce it into the code review process. I know from personal experience that it has saved my bacon, or rather, it's saved the people who would have had to review code for me. Just a few weeks ago, I made a really bad change to a system that I manage. That change was introducing an 800-line JSON file. So a human reviewer would have looked at this and said, well, it renders fine, it's good to go. The AI found probably 30 typos in that JSON file. I can virtually guarantee that, well, I know I didn't find them, and I can virtually guarantee that a human reviewer would not have. So that actually did improve both the quality and the speed of, well, maybe not the speed. A human reviewer would have just LGTM'd it and shipped it to production. But it definitely improved the quality of that code review and then builds my comfort level with working with AI. So I think it's a really interesting area for good exploration there.
Yeah.
Just really quick, one of my favorite models I've seen is engineers sort of like deputizing the different agents with different personalities and sort of asking for review this like you're a security engineer, review this like you're a QA engineer, review this like you're, we don't have architects, we're not big enough for that, but review this as though you're this person who really cares about these things. And I see it both as a great way to sort of get that pre-review on the code so that hopefully you can, spare the human from having to catch the obvious thing. But I think it becomes such a great learning tool, because so often, early in our careers, we get feedback and we don't know why we're doing particular things. You just go, "Oh, do it like this and not like that." But the agents can tell you more about the context.
Yeah. That topic is really interesting to me. These like agents working on agentically generated code, and I've definitely adopted that pattern myself in just like little toy projects that I'm doing. I don't know Python very well, so I made a Claude agent that is really good at reviewing Python, especially for data science stuff. And I know it's better than me, that's for sure. But I have been enjoying that model of kind of like once you learn where the gaps are, starting to create tools that help you mitigate those gaps. I'm curious, Emily, as you're talking about these, are you seeing this like advance to team level practices or organizational level practices, or are these remaining as kind of individuals set up their own Claude MD or whatever?
Yeah, I think we're not quite. I would love to see us get there where there's sort of clearer team-wide practices, and in particular, there's sort of some consistent expectations about exactly how we're using AI in code review and how each team is doing it. I think partly it's we really want to make sure that we're letting sort of our early adopters lead, and so there is a little bit of wanting to kind of let them get out in front of everyone else and then figure out what works. I think also one thing that holds us back is that these tools work so differently depending on the type of code base and the area that our engineers are working in. So like we built our own storage engine, and it's like the most obscure, most heavily optimized Go code base that's been around for 10 years now, that like is totally impenetrable. Any of the training materials are not going to help you make it better, you know. And for that, we really have found these tools are not that useful. On the flip side, we have a newer team, our app enablement team, working on our design system, where there is a lot of great training data out there for the components. And so that team is able to do so much more and find it be so much more effective. And I think like just because of that unevenness in the effectiveness of the tooling, it doesn't feel like we're actually ready to be like, this is how we work across engineering, or even across the teams. I feel like we haven't quite settled into.
Yeah. And valid. I don't think that's a very surprising answer. So just love to hear what is actually happening out there in the universe. Um, the let's see, where do we want to go? Oh, we've got another
Well, I
question.
do think
Oh,
if
go
I could
ahead.
just layer
Yes.
on to that, I think one of the really optimistic things I have about as we're adopting AI is just what Emily was talking about there. We're leaning on the human dynamics of an organization and the learning from each other and sharing that knowledge. I think that like that's super important, maybe as important as it's ever been. Another thing that really I'm seeing starting to happen that's I find really fascinating, you have folks that are starting to share their Gemini.md or their Claude.md files with one another, whether that's within an organization or even sometimes just online. Hey, here's how I develop. The cool thing about that is that when you've got a senior engineer who takes the time to think about and write down explicitly, like, this is my thought process, this is the workflow that I have, I think that that opens up a tremendous amount of opportunity for new entrants into software engineering. We can learn about how these people are really thinking about it. And the fact that you have to be explicit to help the AI, turns out it has this beautiful side effect of being explicit helps the humans on your team and within your organization. And I think that's super cool.
Yeah, my plans directory is one of my favorite directories. Because once you have something good, you keep it. It's
That's
amazing.
right.
Um, PJ has a question. And PJ, good to see you here today. I did not see you at Lead Dev, but good to see you here. How can we design workflows and incentives that actively encourage engineers to critically evaluate and learn from AI outputs, preventing the pitfall of blind reliance on the tools? So, Emily, you talked about this a little bit in terms of the AI free sprint. Um, but yeah, so what are you how are you fighting that human tendency?
Yeah. I think Nathan touched on a really important part of this, which is at the end of the day, humans still own the code and own the output of these tools. Like, in particular, we're not yet at the point where even if you're creating automated code and you send it into pull request review, your name is on it somehow. So I think a really important part of our AI strategy for a long time to come is like, as a human, you stand by the quality of this tool. I also saw a blog post recently that was about how it's like rude to show AI output to people. So like we expect that a human has validated it and said, I think this is high enough quality that I am not embarrassed to submit it to a code reviewer for review. So a lot of it is social. I think also, um, I hope that I hate to, use tools with tools, but I also hope that, as we sort of bring more AI tools into the code review flow, we can be able to kind of flag stuff that has challenges. And then if you open your pull request for review and immediately you get 75 AI comments about how, it has these deficiencies, hopefully you will put it back into the draft and go address them before you ask a human to spend time on it.
Yeah, I love that, and I know Honeycomb and Charity in particular has always talked about this idea of software ownership, right? As the developer, I own this code, and whether you're using Vim or Visual Studio, you own the code. Whether you're using AI or not, you own the code. Like it is absolutely still your code, and it is interesting that, I mean, IDE choice is something that is a very personal choice for a developer. And I don't think we had these conversations around, well, you wrote that in IntelliJ and it failed in production. So are you going to blame IntelliJ? You're not going to, right? Because that wouldn't make any sense. In the same way that blaming the AI shouldn't make any sense either. I think it is a pitfall that we have to watch out for, and I think this question of making sure that the incentives are right, and that you are rewarding the good behavior. And I think the good behavior is software ownership. That's a really good behavior, and thinking about how do we actually incentivize that is important.
We have another question from Tobias. In hindsight, and this is for you, Emily, would you recommend the 2x AI strategy that Honeycomb is pursuing? I don't know if you've been pursuing it long enough to have recommendations or reflections, but yeah, do you have any recommendations or reflections based on how that's going so far?
Yeah, so that was about 6 months ago that I think that
Okay.
we did the letter from the founders, and I would say 100% it was needed. We really needed to create some clarity with people about like what do we believe. So I think it is so important to articulate your sort of AI attitudes and philosophy to the company. And a couple of misses that would have made it smoother. I think our number one, of course, immediately everyone jumps to, how will this be measured in performance reviews? Will I be fired if I don't hit the 2x? And the idea of it certainly was not to try to manage people out because they're not using enough AI. It was to just say, hey, if you feel that you have become 10% or 15% more productive through using these tools, don't stop. Don't go, great, I know AI, like keep looking. There are certainly, companies out there, teams who would say like 2x is not enough, right? Like there are people who there's a lot of real AI enthusiasts who will be like, we're way past that. But I think for us, it was sort of the right kind of line in the sand. I think we also, in addition to having a clearer answer about the performance management question, I think we could have done a better job to set up sort of enabling systems that we launched at the same time as the letter. So people had also, in addition to a lot of questions, some enthusiasm. Like there was a little bit of like, this is a mandate from the founders. Let's get started. And then they were like, what do we need to do? And we were like, you tell us. And so if we had sort of said, like, had a little more of a, hey, these are the steps we want you to take. This is the support the company's going to provide. This is how you're going to give us feedback on how it's going. I think that would have helped really just sort of like create a lot of clarity and help people feel like they could take action, even if they felt a little bit nervous about like, what does this mean?
Yeah, the comms. Go ahead, Nathan. Maybe you're going to say the same thing I'm going to say.
Yeah, I probably was. I was going to just reflect back on that DORA AI capabilities model. One of the probably, look, I love all my capabilities the same, but maybe one of the strongest capabilities is that clear and communicated stance on how you use AI within the organization. And what we found is like well, we didn't really investigate what do those stances look like. The only thing that really matters is that they're clear and that they're well communicated. And something like a founder letter that says, hey, go for this 2x improvement. I think like things that I love about that is that it is, well, obviously it's clear and well communicated. It sets kind of a stretch goal for people. And it also sets up the organization to say, look, actually to your point of maybe we should have had better enabling systems in place. I think without those, you sent a message of we're all here to experiment and learn together. And so that might have been an implicit message, but I think it's a really powerful one for the teams. I suspect that that's the case anyhow.
Yeah, it's a good point. There's a real balance between those two things. I'll also say I forgot one of the most important parts, which is I think that we framed it as 2x productivity. And of course, people are like, what is productivity? And I actually feel like so often the AI messaging falls into this trap of we're going to generate 2x more lines of code. Nobody wants that. Don't do that. Like, if you come out of this and you go, hey, I think have the same amount of output, but my work has twice the quality and twice the impact. Yeah, of course, that's a great way to achieve it. I think we could have been a lot clearer about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the enablement part is hard. We saw it at Stormia too. Like we talked a lot about AI, but then one day the head of engineering, well, probably wasn't one day, but he sat down and did some basic enablement work in the code base, and suddenly that unlocked so much. And you don't want to wait until that enablement has happened. You don't want to say in 6 months we want you all using AI, right? Like that's not an option either. But I do think we've been talking about this a lot at work too, just the comms around change. Like I think they're often the comms and the fears that change introduces are often you know, inadvertently but underestimated when change is happening, because as a leader you've thought about it so clearly and it's so clear to you why you're doing this and you've talked about all that. But um especially junior I have found especially junior engineers can be particularly scared because they don't know what these sorts of what this means, or then they don't have any pattern matching for it.
Yeah, I always say that a metric, like the purpose of a good metric is to start a conversation. And I think that when you don't define what do we mean by productivity, that hopefully you've created the safety in your organization that can start a conversation. What do you mean by productivity? Do you mean I write a function 2x faster, that I create 2x more functions or lines of code, as you said, or am I improving the quality by some measure? I certainly have found myself uh, just a quick anecdote. I had a small task that I needed to do in the code base. I knew exactly how to do it. And I said, I'm going to just practice with AI. So I let the AI do it. Uh, at the end, it probably took twice as long, but the change was at least twice as good in terms of understandability, changeability over time, right? I would have gone in, made the quick fix, shipped it off to production. It totally would have worked. But the AI suggested refactoring, helped me flesh out the tests a little bit more. That was really, really good. It took me longer, but I felt more productive.
Right. We are out of questions at this point. I'm just going to pop the slides back up for a second and go to the very end. So we can keep chatting for a couple of minutes, but while we have you here, we would love to stay in touch with you about these topics. I write about them on LinkedIn for my job, so all the time, if this is your thing. And so does Nathan, so be sure to follow him as well. Literally our jobs. We also have a book that we wrote. It does not talk about AI because AI was not the we weren't in the AI era yet the first time when we wrote this, but we'll be updating it soon. But you can get your free copy if you visit swarmia.com/book and give us your information. We'll get you a copy out. And stay tuned for a new version in the spring, hopefully. So any parting thoughts, Nate? Like, if there's one thing you want this audience to know as they as they leave this hour, what is it?
Ooh, for me, the easy one is like like don't just focus on investing in the AI tools. All of the ways you were planning to make your development process better, gosh, go for those. And of course, for us, it's observability, right? We find that observability is the thing that makes it safe to bring all these tools into your workflow. But it could be CI/CD, it could be changing the way you write tests and having better test coverage, like all that stuff. As the report calls out, is just it's more important than ever. So don't get so focused on AI that you miss the ability to take advantage of this.
How about you, Nathan?
And I guess my thing would be that, what, learning is fun. And this is a great time. We've got new tools in place. And frankly, using AI can be a lot of fun in software development. I might try something that I wouldn't have tried without a pair along. So I think experiment and continue to learn, stay curious. I think that's really, really important. And I'll obviously plus 100 what Emily just said there. All of the things that you were thinking about doing to improve your developer experience, or maybe even just deciding to look into how is our developer experience, please keep doing that. Keep making it better.
Yeah, I think that is going to be as essential as it has always been, just a lot more visible
Yep.
in the AI era. Well, thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Emily. This is like, what a treat that this is our jobs to talk to each other about this stuff. So it's been great to chat with you, and thanks both of you for your time in preparing for this and spending your time with us today. And thanks to everybody who showed up. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And again, feel free to drop me an email or find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to continue the conversation with you beyond today's call. So thanks so much.